Hi, my name is Julia Pearson, and I have been wanting to do something like this for a very long time. I was in the wine business for 15 years, and I ended up leaving the wine business to have a baby and do some other things, but I miss talking about wine. It was one of my favorite things in the business. And so I decided, well, I don't have to miss it anymore. I can do it on video. So that's what this is. It's just me talking about wine, tasting wine. I feel like my approach is a little bit unique, and so maybe you can learn something from this, and I'll just have fun. So the first video here today is just going to be setting up a few kind of ground rules for how I taste, so that I don't have to get too distracted as I move on in these videos. I could talk about wine for hours, but I don't think you want to hear that. So I chose a wine as the first one that is a little bit off the wall, because I didn't want you to get distracted with the actual wine I'm tasting. I wanted you to really think more about what I'm saying about how to taste and sort of the techniques I'm going to tell you. But I will say that this wine is Ferrara White Port. And maybe you've never heard of a white port. It's a lovely kind of aperitif, and it's really, really nice with in the summer over ice with a little lemon twist. It's really nice with a chiffonade of basil. It's just really refreshing and lovely. So I am going to taste this wine as if I've never tasted it, which is how I try to approach every wine that I've tasted, because even if I've tasted a wine 100 times, every bottle is different. The way I feel today is different from the way I felt yesterday. Maybe I'm more awake today. Maybe I've had a particularly enriching experience in my morning today, and so I'm feeling very full and happy, and so the mood that I bring to the wine is different from a mood that I might bring tomorrow or yesterday. And that's what I want you to keep in mind, that tasting is very, very subjective. Yes, there are certain smells and aromas and things like that that you can get out of a wine. But ultimately, to me, tasting wine is about learning about yourself, because it forces you, if you really want to get into it, it forces you to quiet your mind and to get very, very present with what you're about to taste and smell. It forces you to hone in and focus all of your energies on what is in this glass and trying to figure out what the story is in this glass. Ultimately, any glass of wine is from a particular vineyard. It's from a particular year. It was harvested in a very specific way. The season was very, very specific. Was there hail? Was there a lot of rain? Was there drought? All of these things affect the wine. How was the wine pruned? How many times was it pruned? Were there weeds left between the rows? Did they use pesticides? Did they hand pick the grapes, or did they use machines to pick the grapes? How did they crush the grapes? Of the many ways there are to crush grapes. Did they do cold fermentation? Did they add yeast, or did they allow the natural yeast in the winery to ferment the wine? So many choices. Just a myriad of choices that you can't even imagine. And every single one of those choices affects this final outcome. So there is a story, and the story tells you not only all of those things, but it also can take you somewhere, because all of the flavors and aromas in this glass exist in other places. They exist in flowers and fruits and herbs and spices and minerals and all kinds of things. And so in tasting a wine, you have the opportunity to be transported to your memories, to certain places that you've been. And that is what is so fun for me about wine, is that I just never know where I'm going to go when I smell and taste a wine. Now, I tend to focus mostly on smell, because smelling is about 80% of tasting. Tasting in terms of what's on your taste buds, is really only salt, sweet, sour, bitter, and umami. And so all of the other things that you experience when you're tasting something actually come from your olfactory bulb, the part of your brain that is the aroma part of your brain, and the way that your mouth is hooked up with your nose in the back of your throat. And so it's very, very important that that you sort of allow that to be as open as possible. So I spend a lot of time smelling a wine because I know that most of what I'm going to get from the wine in terms of flavor is going to come from the nose. I mean, I usually don't have that many surprises when I really pay attention smelling a wine. When I go to taste it, the flavors aren't usually a surprise to me. Usually I will get things like texture, weight, the acid structure, and those kinds of things are what come from the actual tasting of the wine. So let's go ahead and smell this, see what it's all about. First of all, the color is just really, really beautiful. It's just a deep, deep yellow, but there's just a little hint of peach. It's a really pretty, oh my. Okay, so that is like, well, first of all, there's a kind of a sherry quality to it. So what I mean by that is, and I always try to push myself further, what do I mean by sherry? Maybe you've never had sherry. So what does that smell like? Okay, so let's keep going. It smells like dried figs. It smells like baked apples, vanilla bean, there's something I'm not quite naming here, but I'm just going to keep going. There's a very see, this is what happens with me sometimes, is that a lot, not just with me, this happens with a lot of people. They smell a wine and they kind of go, oh, wow, that's interesting. What is that? But then they leave it. Then they just say, what is that? And then they just drink it and they don't, search for it. And that there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But what I love about drinking wine is that search. So I'm going to keep searching this, because it expands my awareness when I do that. It forces me to go into the kind of repository in my brain of smells and flavors that I've built up over the years. Because every time I taste something, every time I cook, every time I'm, smelling flowers, I remember them. I try to remember them because I know that at some point they are going to be in a glass of wine. Okay, so now it's starting to kind of come to me a little bit. It's almost like a stewed apricot. But there's something else. There's a spicy quality that I'm not. There's a little bit of pepper, a little bit of black pepper. There's almost like a little bit of, it's going to sound kind of funny, but it's almost like a lime that's been, left out in the sun, like limeade that's kind of gotten a little bit sweet and concentrated and a little bit old. Sounds weird, but you probably know what I'm talking about. Mandarin oranges, that's something that's there. Mandarin oranges, but like the canned mandarin oranges, those little ones. Yeah, now I'm starting to sort of tap in a little bit deeper. And almost like a little bit of saltwater taffy and nougat, like that nougat candy that you can get with the almonds in it. I'm getting some of that in here too. Wow, it's just beautiful. Just beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to take a sip. Really nice weight, Really nice weight on the palate, which I would expect because this is, this is more of an aperitif or a dessert style wine. So it's 19% alcohol, and the alcohol is what's giving this wine its weight. Wines that are lower in alcohol contains glycerin, which gives you that sort of silky, luscious mouthfeel. So wines that are low in alcohol are going to be more bracing and more vibrant and racy and very light on the tongue. So the alcohol is giving it this weight, but it's not too alcoholic at all. It's got a lovely bit of sugar to balance it out, and it has just enough acid so that it finishes nice and clean, which is what makes it very nice for an aperitif. The finish is very, very long. Really nice kind of apricot, peach kind of finish. So one other thing I'm going to talk about, and this video might be a little bit longer than the rest because I'm trying to just sort of lay out some of these basics, but I'm not going to do much more. But one thing I would like to talk about that you'll see me do is the way that I aerate the wine across my tongue. And it's, a geeky wine thing that you see people do all the time. Also this swirling. What is up with the swirling? It aerates the wine, and it allows the flavors, when I put my nose into it, allows the flavors to really come up into the aroma, to come right up into my nose. So that's why we do this. And, I stick my nose right down into that glass because I want to get the most concentrated smell that I can from it. And then, this is what I do. I pull the wine across my tongue and I bring air into it to bring the aroma to the back of my throat up into my olfactory zone. So it's a way of just concentrating the flavor of the wine. So that's about all I'm going to say today. I think that I would encourage you to just start smelling things. Go to your refrigerator and start just really, really smelling and opening up things, jams and jellies and your flowers. Go to your spice drawer and start opening up spices because you will smell them. And have fun. And I'll see you soon. Thanks.